Now, briefly mention here about syncing, updating, backing up, and restoring your data from backup. On Apple devices, you can back up your iOS settings, you can back up your email, documents that you have on your device, and other data using that iTunes software. Another thing to make sure that you do when talking about iTunes is that whenever there's an iTunes update, make sure you update. You don't necessarily need to do it right away, but you might need to do it after a little bit of time that it's been out there and is stable. There have been times where the iTunes comes out and then in the first day or two they're having to make a change to it, and you know you might become vulnerable. So just be wary of that. iTunes backs up your computer and your user profile directly on Windows 7 and Vista, and as well as 8.1 and 10. Now iCloud backs up to storage on the Apple websites using iCloud.com. Very great, good feature to use. Now if you need to restore data from a backup, connect the device to your iTunes, make sure you're logged in, and then select Restore from Backup to restore that data from the backup, just in case you have to use it. iTunes can also be used to install iOS updates and patches to your device. iTunes is great software for your Apple devices. Now when using iCloud, make sure that if there are limitations for contacts, calendars, reminders, and bookmarks, just make sure you go to the support website for Apple, support.apple.com, and that's currently what it is, and then look and see what those are, because there may be limitations that you reach and you don't understand why. As of current time, the total number of calendars, events, and reminders that you can have are 25,000 per iCloud account. Having mentioned the support.apple.com website, if you do run any issues with any of your Apple devices, that is the #1 spot you should go, especially if you're out of warranty. They have their support knowledge bases out there, so you can go look at those articles and look for, do searches based on an issue you might be seeing, and then do a search for that and possibly find the resolution for that, and save yourself the money of having to call for support if you're out of warranty. Now if you're still within that warranty period, make sure you utilize that to your advantage. Now a mobile device is only as secure as you keep it. Remember that data cap on a smartphone, that could be at risk if lost, stolen, or damaged, so make sure that you take precautions to protect that data. Such things that could be on your device that you don't want other people having access to, your email, obviously, when you set up those email accounts. Your calendar events, you don't want them to know when you're going to be home or not at home. You don't want to create a vulnerability for yourself. Voicemails that you have saved, contacts, especially on a business side, you don't want other people having access to those. There's videos and photos you've taken. You could have secure data from a product you're working on. You don't want that getting leaked out to other people, and you don't want your Wi-Fi passwords and network connections, those passwords, to get out to someone if you've lost your phone. So protect that data. Use the passcode locks that you have available to you. Use locator applications to find your phone. Apple is great about this, so you have the ability to generally find your phone, and the ability to do a remote wipe to wipe that device in case someone tries to use it. If you're going to use a passcode lock, I believe the current standard now is a 6-digit passcode for the Apple iOS. Traditionally it was 4-digit passcode, but I believe with Apple iOS 9 and 9.1 that is being changed to a 6-digit passcode. If that's created, you cannot access the contents of the device without that passcode. You can still make an emergency phone call, but if someone's stolen your device, they're probably not going to be using that device to make an emergency call. You can also configure an iOS device to erase after a certain number of failed passcode attempts. If that occurs, you can restore your data from a backup if you've set those up. As I mentioned, as a last resort, if you need to, you can use remote wipe to delete the contents of the phone to protect and secure your privacy. So that is an option if you need, which I hope you never have to use. Now let's talk a little bit about troubleshooting your iOS devices. Some of those common problems that occur with your Apple products are the touch screen is not working properly, some of the settings you're not able to change them, perhaps the home button doesn't work, or some of your apps just stop working. Now there are various problems that can be solved by doing these simple things. My first thing I would say to you, as I mentioned earlier, is go to the support website, the support.apple.com, for those troubleshooting tips and tools. So make sure that's your first stop. And you'll see that a lot of these things I'll talk about are done in those knowledge base articles. One of the first things to do, and you might not like hearing this, and our users don't like hearing this, is simply restart the device. Restart the phone, restart the iPad, restart the iPod. If that doesn't work, reset the device. And this kind of stinks, but sometimes you need to reset the device. As I mentioned earlier, see if there's an update for your iOS and update that. You can either reset or erase, or reset all your settings, or you can even go and erase all the data and the settings and then restore your phone. And there is a restore feature that you can use using your iTunes, so if you need to, you can do that. But make sure you hit those troubleshooting knowledge base articles on the support website for Apple. Generally, when you call this the support line, or even if you're using it online for Apple, those technicians, those support personnel are just reading those knowledge base articles. They're just doing the research for you. So if you can avoid that time and cost, I would highly recommend going to those knowledge base articles yourself. Now when we jump back to the Android side, most settings that you will need are in the settings app. So make sure you come here to see and locate any of those settings that you want to change or might be having problems with, such as the Wi-Fi, or if you want to change something on the screen, if you need to sync some accounts. All that's here. If you need to check the date and time and maybe see if there's a change that needs to be made, such as the region you're in, so you can change that. That is all located in the settings. Now, because the Android market is so huge and there's so many devices, make sure you use the user guide for that device, for supporting that device, because there are going to be differences from device to device. Now, because of the obvious ties, setting up your Gmail account on an Android device is fairly simple. As I mentioned before, there are other types of accounts that can be configured on your Android device as well, such as an Exchange or other email account. So it's relatively easy. Same thing with, as I mentioned, with setting up email on an Apple device. If you're using a corporate network, Exchange server as an example, you will need to know the information, such as the name of the server. You might need to know the ports. You need to have an admin account to be able to authenticate that and allow that to work. So just sometimes be careful with that and make sure that if you don't have access, you get with the person who has access. If you're testing a device, you need to see how email works on that Android device, and you might need to go do some research on a new device as it's coming out to see if there are any changes in the way that Exchange works with an Android device. Or if you are using another operating system such as a BlackBerry, the BlackBerry setup is completely different. That's a whole nother bear, which is, as I said, they are fading out of the market, so you may not ever have to worry about that. Now, another great thing with your Android devices are you can sync your contacts, you can sync your Gmail, you can sync your, your Google Calendar, your Exchange Calendar. So that is all options that are available to you using your Android operating system. When we talk about backups, most Android devices have an app that can back up data to a smart card, such as an SD card that you've put into your phone, or even a USB device if it's present. Now, there's no single app for backing up your Android device, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. So if you're starting to have some problems, you might need to go to your provider store, if there's one like a Verizon store, to see if they can't help you with that. Obviously, you can use different cloud services, but make sure you talk with your providers or read the documentation to see what's available for you for your backing up your information. Now, unlike the iOS, with the Android OS, your updates are automatically pushed to your device. You can manually check for them if you know they're coming out and it hasn't got to you yet. You can force that to check looking at your system updates in your phone, but generally speaking, they are going to be automatically pushed to you, whereas with the iOS, you may not know that the update's there yet. So make sure that, like I said, you have a device to be able to plug in to charge your phone while it's doing that update, so that you do not drain the battery and possibly have a corrupt update, which you don't want to have to deal with. So make sure you can wait on that if you can. Sometimes you'll be prompted to if you are ready for it. And here recently, the updates have been great where they're actually giving you a prompt saying, hey, there's an update that needs to occur. They'll give you a warning about the power supply being needed. So make sure you pay attention to those before you're just acknowledging and possibly causing a problem with your device.